Donald Trump has lashed out at South Africa in a fact-free, nonsense-fueled tirade and announced he'll be cutting all US funding to the country and ordering further investigations into the terrible, horrible things that the South African government is apparently doing. So let's look at what the US president claimed is going on in South Africa, if any of it is actually true. And let's also look at how we got here, that a sitting US president has an extraordinary vendetta based on false information about South Africa. It involves Afriforum, Elon Musk, and even Fox News and Tucker Carlson. So let's get into it. This is the issue with Donald Trump's misguided vendetta against South Africa. You're watching The Issue with Dan Corder. South Africa is truly a movie. Welcome to the watch party. We're going to look at exactly what he said about South Africa in both the social media post and on the tarmac. But I'm going to start on the tarmac. He said, "It's only South Africa. Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things, horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We're making determinations until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing. They're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and they're actually doing things that are perhaps far worse than that." Now, it's reasonable to assume that President Trump was responding to the Expropriation Act being signed into law in South Africa by President Ramaphosa recently. And the Expropriation Act, as has been exhaustively, demonstrably explained, does not arbitrarily confiscate land. It does not affect or threaten private property rights. It does not have any potential to take away people's homes or properties or areas that they live in suburbs across South Africa. And if you've been led to believe that, you have been actively deceived by people who are probably willfully, in full knowledge, misrepresenting the facts of the Expropriation Act. What the Expropriation Act actually does is it allows South Africa's government to repurpose land that has been underutilized or left dormant in the South African public's best interest. And newsflash, every single country in the world does this. The United States of America does this, which allow them to repurpose dormant or underutilized land in the common good. When you want to build a highway, that's exactly what you do. When you want to build the Gautrain in Johannesburg, that is exactly what you do. So now you might be wondering, well, if we all do this, why did we need this new Expropriation Act? Simply because the Expropriation Act that was just signed was an update on the 1970s apartheid-era Expropriation Act. It needed to be updated to fall in line with modern laws and South Africa's constitution. That's it. And if the Expropriation Act has got any part of it that is unconstitutional, that will be found in the Constitutional Court when it is almost inevitably taken to court, and it will be rejected. So that's the facts of the matter. And as we have watched certain political parties twirl and claim that the Expropriation Act is something else, and they're going to be the last line of defense against this evil government doing these terrible things, remember that they have been misleading you for their own political gain. So when Trump says that they've been confiscating land in South Africa, they absolutely have not been. In fact, there has been no confiscation or taking away of land since 1994, since the new South Africa started. In fact, that was kind of the apartheid government's whole thing, is unjust removal, taking away and expropriation of land. And the English South African-led government before that, see the 1913 Land Act. And there is a grand irony to Donald Trump saying it is so horrible that people are having their land taken away against their will, while at the same time trying to bully Denmark into selling America Greenland against their will, into trying to bully Panama into handing over the Panama Canal, and most recently into saying that he wants the whole of Gaza to be emptied of Palestinians, which is ethnic cleansing, to force Palestinians to go into all the other countries around that area and to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the West under US ownership. So now let's look at what he wrote on Truth Social about this. He wrote, "South Africa is confiscating land." Not true. "And treating certain classes of people very badly." And by certain classes of people, he means white people, white South Africans. And this is almost certainly because of an international campaign to try and portray white South Africans as an oppressed minority group. We'll talk about who's been doing that in just a second. Trump goes on, "It is a bad situation that the radical left media doesn't want to so much as mention. A massive human rights violation at minimum is happening for all to see." Again, no, it's not. No evidence of that. Then Trump ends, the United States won't stand for it. We will act. Also, I will be cutting off all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation of the situation has been completed. So again, he needs an investigation. He actually hasn't found out anything. And that's where we are now. So how did we get here? It could be the fact that South Africa has steadfastly stood up for Palestinians in the face of horrific actions by the State of Israel and the Israeli Defense Force in the International Court of Justice that has infuriated many leading American politicians, particularly Republican MAGA Trump politicians. It could be the fact that South Africa plays a very significant role in BRICS and has steadfastly refused to reject or move away from Russia and China. That has also outraged a lot of American politicians. Or it could be the fact that a Pretoria Boys High School old boy is now the most influential person in Donald Trump's US government. Elon Musk, for years, has tweeted or now posted nonsense, allowed for bigotry, and peddled in conspiracy theories about South Africa that have been demonstrably shown to be untrue over and over again. But there is another force, another factor which has certainly played a massive role in how we got to this moment. It's Afriforum. If you don't know, Afriforum is a lobby group in South Africa. They claim that they work to protect the rights of minorities, but their interests are overwhelmingly geared towards white Afrikaans people in South Africa. And Afriforum has led a campaign across the world for years, trying to convince the world that South African white people are under attack and under threat, and the myth of white genocide, the myth of white people under attack and being oppressed, the myth of like this extraordinary assault on white farmers in South Africa has been thoroughly, exhaustively, repeatedly debunked by both local research teams and international research teams and journalists from all around the world. And yet that hasn't stopped Afriforum from leading their world tour of disinformation and very loose interpretation of facts. And back in 2018, Afriforum had a massive breakthrough. They went to America and they managed to score a meeting with Fox News and specifically Tucker Carlson, who at the time had the most watched political news show in America. Afriforum said all the nonsense that they said. And then soon after that, Tucker Carlson did his own separate segment on alleged land grabs and expropriation in South Africa, which we know Donald Trump watched because he then tweeted about it. And he tweeted that he was going to get his government at the time to investigate, and he even tagged Fox News and Tucker Carlson. That is where this mess truly kicked off. And in the last handful of years, Afriforum has continued their disinformation lobbying work around the world, particularly in America. They've become mixed up with the same kind of disinformation rhetoric that Elon Musk has been spreading on X. And that is how we are now at the point where a sitting US president is lashing out against South Africa. And Afriforum was absolutely glowing earlier this week. They were so thrilled. They were so proud of the work that they'd done, and they were so delighted that Donald Trump was now lashing out against South Africa. And then suddenly Afriforum realized that what they had done might turn out very badly for their core constituents, their supporters, white farmers in South Africa, because white farmers in South Africa, all farmers, benefit enormously from a preferential trade agreement called AGOA, which gives South African food producers preferential access to the extremely lucrative US market. And suddenly Afriforum realized that if Trump was lashing out against the South African government, he might cancel or change the terms of AGOA. And suddenly Afriforum was calling for the US government to specifically sanction and target South African politicians for doing none of the things that Afriforum has accused them of doing. Afriforum is literally calling for sanctions on our elected leaders based on the lies that they have told about what South Africa's leaders are allegedly doing. So that's the issue with Donald Trump's misguided vendetta against the South African government. Thank you for watching.